My husband Abhishek actually worked at Starbucks for a while. Pretty.
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. It's fine. It's fine. As a matter of fact, I actually, when I first moved to the States, this is one of the first places that I wanted to work at was Starbucks. And because all the things that I've learned about Starbucks when I was in the Middle East was just this picture of like, a really cozy, nice place with just amazing coffee.
You're really exactly, you fit the bill for the third culture kid, right? You've been, and basically that is, somebody that's growing up around multiple cultures who may or may not be in the culture of their parents. So we have a bit of a third culture in our home because you have to create some sense of, you can't be fully Indian nor can you be fully American when you're living in such a two contrasting worldviews clashing together. So I can definitely relate. Um, and I think that might be one of the reasons why I'm drawn to your content is there's so much there which I can relate to as far as the sense of belonging, a sense of the way that you observe other people and the way that you observe the world around you is really unique. And yeah, I just want to hear a little bit more about that and how you, like, growing up as a third culture kid, how did that form your identity? Because you're Sri Lankan, but then you're also a bit of a minority in Sri Lanka, being from a Christian Seventh Day Adventist family. Then on top of that, you move to Oman, where then you're again a further minority. You move to the United States, where again you're what people would think about a South Asian person. Their like stereotype about a South Asian may not fit who you are either, like you've just suggested. So they might look at you and expect, oh, he's an Indian guy, who's Ram Krishna Gopalan, and you're like, what your identity? But would love to hear a bit more on how you formed that.
Yeah, that's a big question, and that's a really good question. In many ways, I think I'm still trying to understand and process what that means to me. And especially right now, I'm in my 30s, and I just feel like it's just not. It not was not until like the last 5 years or so where I've been able to kind of put uh, some identity pieces on these hooks, on these placeholders that I've uh, obtained over the last few years. But yeah, it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy. I have very few times felt like I fit in places. Very, very few places. I made a TikTok about this recently where I talked about my experience as a third culture kid, and I said that for me, home is not in places, but home is in people. And I think I'm sure you can relate to that in some ways as well. Yeah, and I've never felt like a
Mm.
location was home for me. I never felt like that. I can't think of a time. Even Sri Lanka. I mean, even though I was born there, a home in Sri Lanka is again determined by the people there. If my party was my grandmother wasn't there, if my city, that's my aunt, is wasn't there, if my thambis, my brothers weren't there, won't be home anymore. But if they are here, now it's home. So home is in people, not in places. And I've also I've also felt like for most of my life I felt that my story was a liability and not an asset, because I found myself
Mm.
like explaining
Mm-hmm.
myself or explaining who
Sure.
I am to people, and that was exhausting. Whenever people ask me where I'm from, that's a loaded question for
Yes.
me. Like how do you give an answer? How do you give it? Like when people ask you where you're from, like how would you give an answer? And I'm sure uh, different people respond to it differently, but for me, I always have to give a story. Like you just have to tell them, hey, I was born here, I was living there, this happens, this that. Um, so a part of the in the last few years, I've also kind of realized that I've come to understand that like maybe not everybody deserves that story.
Yeah.
Because not
Mhm.
everybody, yeah, and so I've had to kind of learn how to read people, and because the
Yeah.
story is sacred,
Hmm.
that's holy ground. I really, that's one of the things that I really believe in. So all that is to say, it's been a growing process. It's just been a process where I'm still trying to
Hmm.
find out like where I fit into spaces. But now, um I'm kind of at this stage in my life where I'm really owning the fact that I'm not
Hmm.
going to fit anywhere perfectly. Kind of, I'm in this stage where, what, just let's own that. Let's own that. So there are different
Hmm.
spheres of my life. You have the Sri Lankan sphere, then you got the Christian sphere, then you got the you know third culture kid sphere, there's the
Hmm.
Tamil sphere. So there's different spheres, right? I'm thinking about it
Yes.
in terms of, like, I'm just trying to give a visual here. I used to think that, like, I fit into one of these things more than these other places. But now I'm realizing, no, if there's a place
Hmm.
where I find myself kind
Hmm.
of quote unquote home, it's in between those
Hmm.
spaces. It's in the gaps between those spaces where
Hmm.
I feel like I thrive. I feel like now I can own that space. And so I think in many ways that's allowed me to that's allowed me to have interactions with different groups of people that I've realized that other people may not be may not have that privilege or that opportunity to have those conversations. Like, especially, like, to give you an example here, when it comes to racial conversations here in the United States, and racial tensions are at an all-time high. The conversations usually, at least from mainstream media, or the conversations that are usually visible, are conversations between maybe whites and blacks, right?
Right. It's very binary. It's
Very
very
binary, yeah,
dualistic, like this or that.
right. So I've realized, you know what? First of all, I've come to understand that my worldview is very different from these binary worldviews. And for the longest time, I thought that something was off with me because I couldn't fit into these conversations neatly. So it's not until I kind of own that space of, like, you know what, maybe the place where I really thrive is kind of in the between, but somewhere close to here, somewhere close to there. It doesn't. I don't. It's just
Hmm.
so fluid, and so that's
Hmm.
allowed me to have conversations, or think, or at least think pieces that
Right.
I've realized other people have not, or other people have not been able
Sure.
to do in the same way that I have been doing, and
Right.
so
In a non-threatening manner.
in a non-threatening manner. I mean, I try as much as
Hmm.
possible to do those things. So yeah, so I right now in this stage of my life, I'm owning that. I'm owning the fact that I don't fit everywhere, but I also fit nowhere, and I fit in between. But just trying to hold on to all those things and just take one step at a time, one moment at a time, and try to see the stories behind people.